Welcome to the Healing Space Live and Online Chats with Roxanne and Rhonda. This podcast will share information on self-love, living a wellness-filled life, having healthy relationships, how to avoid unhealthy relationships, how to heal from traumatic events, and more. If this is your first time joining us, we welcome you and we hope this will not be your last. Enjoy the show. Hey, y'all. Welcome to another episode of Healing Space Live and Online Chats with Roxanne and Rhonda. I'm so excited because today our guest is Lee Blakemore, who is the author of Entrenched, a memoir of holding on and letting go. But before we delve into that intriguing title, I would love to show this quick video of, well, you'll see. Let's go on, Linda. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today for another video. I'm Lee Blakemore. When an overwhelming need bubbled up inside of me, I turned my back on a kind and loving husband in search of an older, controlling man. At the time, I had no idea why. I found him. He was angry and demanding out for himself. Months into our turbulent relationship, I also discovered that he was married. But I needed him, so I hung on. A year and a half later, when I could no longer tolerate his anger, his deception, his broken promises, I told him I was done. But he was not done with me. Even though I said no, even though I fought and I kicked and I screamed, he did not stop. Our relationship ended that night after he sexually assaulted me. My name is Lee Blakemore. Since that time, I have become an author, an advocate, and a speaker, but I will always be a survivor. Like so many victims of intimate sexual assault, I blamed myself. I never called the police. In fact, I never told anyone. After all, when something like that happens with someone you're dating, someone you've been intimate with, surely that isn't sexual assault, is it? Yes, it is. It's not your fault. And you are not alone. Statistics are staggering. In the United States, there are over 463,600 victims of rape and sexual assault every year. That's 1 in 5 women over the age of 12. Half of those assaults are perpetrated by an acquaintance, and a third are never reported. If you are in an unsafe relationship, or if you have been a victim of intimate sexual assault, please seek help. Victims of intimate sexual assault suffer the same physical and mental health issues as any other rape victim. You deserve to be healthy and happy and whole. You can overcome this. I did. My second book, Entrenched, a memoir of holding on and letting go, details my journey, living with and moving beyond the unhealthy partners I chose as a result of my unresolved childhood trauma. Once I understood and overcame that childhood trauma, I was able to forge for myself a healthy, happy, and safe life with a safe partner. Marnie Grundman says, the effects of trauma rule our lives until we take charge, take a chance, and work through it. My wish for you is that you will also be able to work through your trauma, forge happy and healthy relationships. God bless.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. Thank you so much for your transparency. I started reading the book. I haven't finished it yet, but I was sharing with someone. I felt like I was watching the beginning of a Lifetime movie. It was very, very good, you know. So I noticed that the topic of intimate sexual assault, I don't hear that a lot. I've been doing presentations for years or going to presentations for years. And when you talk about, they just mainly say no means no. And I've never actually heard the term intimate sexual assault. So, and it's even if your husband or your partner, whoever it is, no means no. And you did reference that in the video. And you also stated that, I like how you stated that you overcame your trauma. And I want to know if you could just share with our listeners how you did that. That's important.
Well, certainly it's a process of a lot of reading, a lot of therapy, a lot of years, a lot of journaling, and a lot of writing. Writing for me was a big process in, I guess, figuring things out. And what I basically had to do was pull back the layers of the onion, because the first trauma for me was understanding the child sexual abuse and working through that. But what I learned many years later as a result of writing was that there were other layers, and the abandonment was much more difficult for me to realize and work through, actually. but the big way to choose a healthy partner and to get yourself centered is really to understand your past. We all have one. There's no escaping it, right? And few of us escape childhood unscathed. So, our past formulates our self-worth, how we attach to others, which is really important, but also how we believe we deserve to be treated. And when that past is cloaked in unresolved childhood trauma, it will lure us toward unhealthy partners unconsciously. And these partners will oftentimes be very similar to those that may have hurt us in our past. Now, we're drawn to these people for very important reasons, right? To help us remember, to work through those psychological issues, to gain control over something we didn't have control over. And in my case, another reason, to get the outcome I did not get as a child. Healing is a journey, and I have learned that it's a lifetime journey, not something we ever accomplish, and it never ends. But once we have confronted our trauma, once we have grown in our healing and become a more centered person, insightful and aware of who we are, why we make the choices we make, then and only then can we choose centered and healthy partners.
So I'm really tripping right now because I'm in a project right now. I'm writing a chapter in an anthology. So I had my vision of what I was going to write, this, that, and the other. And the editor asked me a question. She says, because I told her that I had never heard my mother say I love you until I was in my 20s.
Aww.
And she says, how did that affect your relationships? How did that affect you? And that it took me back, and it made me change the whole writing of my chapter, because I realized, because I too am a victim of, I don't like to say, of childhood sexual assault, not being loved, not feeling that love. And that does, it really, really, and I didn't realize how much it affected me, but it really does. And we don't know it. Like you said, it's unconsciously affecting us. Wow. Okay. Wanda, you want to add anything to that before we go on to the...
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say hello. I'm the other half of Chats with Roxanne and Rhonda. And thank you also. Thank you, Ms. Blakemore and Linda. Is it okay to use your first name?
Yes, please.
All right. So I just want to thank you, Linda, for being our guest here on our podcast this afternoon. depending on when you hear this, someone may be hearing it this evening. But I agree with Roxanne that, telling your story and helping people through your writing has been awesome, because, your book, first of all, is just Entrenched. It's an excellent read. When you pick it up, it is truly what people say, a page turner. But the interesting thing, it's your life. So it's not just a page turner, like a story, a book, and as Roxanne said, a Lifetime movie. It's your life. So if you don't mind, I just want to ask you some questions. And before I even start with the questions, Linda, I just want to say thank you, because as women, we don't put that in writing. We harbor it, we hold on to our truth, or what may be considered our dirty little secrets, and we don't tell anybody about them. And then therefore it's harder and longer for us to get free from them. But in your book, you tell a story when you were, I think, right around the age of 13, and you and a group of your friends was coming from a carnival. And you described the fact that you were kind of the outsider, or more of the peripheral, not the cheerleader. Excuse me for using that as an example to all the cheerleaders of the world. I'm using it to say you were not Miss Popular at that time. However, you were coming from this carnival with your friends, and a group of boys pull up on the sidewalk, if I remember correctly, and you had something inside you just jump, Linda. I wonder if you could describe that feeling, because you were enticed or maybe turned on by this group of boys. Can you describe that feeling, and what would you say to that young lady, that young 13-year-old Linda?
Well, the feeling was, oh my gosh, somebody wants me. Somebody loves me. It was a feeling that I had craved, and a lot of which came out of the unresolved childhood issues that I hadn't even thought about. I mean, I'm sure I never really totally forgot them, but the way you don't remember things from when you were 5 years old, I certainly just didn't think about them. And here were these boys, older boys, who really wanted me. And that made me feel so special and so important. But if I were looking back today to that young lady, that little girl, I would say to her, the young men chasing after you are not interested in loving and protecting you. They are predators, and you are prey. Remember what happens to prey after it's caught.
Wow. Thank you. That's so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Roxanne, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Oh, wow. I was kind of like on the sexual assault theme. I want to get back to DV in a minute, but you stated that in your video that, well, I don't know who was in the video or not, that the victims blame themselves for the sexual assault. And did you blame yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And I want if you could explain why you think that is, or especially since rape is not the victim's fault. Why do we blame ourselves? Because I've done that too, but I want to hear from you why you blamed yourself.
I think as women, we take responsibility for a lot of things that we are not responsible for. And I think we are hardest on ourselves. We know our mistakes and our shortfalls and our shortcomings better than anybody else. And we remind ourselves about them all the time. Mm-hmm. For me, I blamed myself because I chose this person. I had previously been intimate with him. I overlooked the warning signs. And all of that destructive talk that was going through my brain. But the reality of it is that whether it is an intimate sexual assault or a stranger sexual assault, we are never, ever at fault when someone hurts us. Never. I don't care if we wore seductive clothing, or we had a little too much to drink at a party, or we took a shortcut that we know wasn't a safe shortcut, or we chose an unsafe partner. When we say no, it's no. We are never at fault. But I think the most important thing I want women to really realize and remember is we are also not alone. I mean, this happens to so many women, as you saw the statistics in the video. Sexual assault is never something that we ask for. It's never something we deserve. And it's never our fault.
I'm glad you said that, because we're starting, prayerfully October, no later than November, we're launching a support group called Healing Space Warriors. And I want survivors or those who have experienced domestic violence and sexual assault to be a part of this group, and let, it wasn't your fault. It absolutely was not your fault, you know. So so I'm glad you are reiterating that for us. Rhonda, you want to take one?
Yeah, I do. I really want to jump in there because I don't say this out loud a lot, and I'm glad I'm getting a chance to say it on a podcast, because my dad taught me when I was about 13. I didn't quite understand it at that time, but now it has stayed with me all my life. My dad said to me, Rhonda, if you walked in the room naked and sat on my lap, if I touched you, I would be wrong. I'm like, okay, because I thought it was kind of weird, but I was my dad. At 13, I was starting to notice boys, and I was developing. I was a little slow. Was developing, no shape and what, no breasts and everything. That message was so powerful to me the rest of my life. And in addition, Linda, I thank you because you're so much further. I thank you for recognizing it's a journey, it's a process, but it is never our fault along the line if somebody touches us, assaults us in the wrong way at any time. So I think that, like I said, that lesson just stayed with me for a really long time. And if I could just go back to your comment, you said it was the feeling of wanting to be loved, and I think desire. I also, at a young age, had, like I just said, that message from my dad. But when I was 14, actually it was 13, I liked a guy who was 18, and he refused to have anything to do with me until I turned 14. Now, the funny thing is his birthday was before mine. By then he was 19. So it was still a 5-year difference, right? It wasn't like suddenly I'm 14, he's 18. But, and it was, I was fortunate, Linda. I was fortunate. But what I mean by fortunate, when he attempted to have sex with me, I was able to ward him off and he stopped, so I was fortunate. But can you talk just a little more about that feeling? Because I think that's what happens inside of us, that feeling of, oh, this older guy likes me. I am wanted by the older. I don't have to deal with these little 12, 13-year-old boys you messing with. This older guy likes me. Roxanne might want to chime in on that too, right?
I will.
Will we just have a brief conversation, particularly if we have any younger people listening to our audience, anyone working with younger people as well as parents? What can we say to those 13, 14-year-old girls that when it looks so cute that somebody 19, 20, 21 wants you?
Well, I just go back to the same thing that I said previously. I think for me, an older man is, and these boys were older, they were wiser and worldly, and, they can have anybody they want and they're picking me. That really made me feel special. And of course, having a history of having had a relationship with a very manipulative, it was not a forced relationship as a child, with a very manipulative older person who made me feel like a princess and made promises to me and rewarded me and all of those things. I associated someone older, wiser, as bringing something to the table for me, right? He's going to love me. It was all of that. But I go back to the same thing. When there's somebody that much older than you, especially when you're young, I mean, I understand the older we get, the age gap means less, but prior to being an adult, we're prey. We're just prey. They are not interested in a long-term, loving, committed relationship with us at the age of 7 or 13 or 14. That's not what they're thinking about, and that's not what they want. They see us as an easy target. And of course, what happens to prey after it's caught? We're kind of gobbled up, eaten, destroyed, and cast aside. And that's what happens to us. And then we're left feeling damaged, dirty, broken, discarded, and worthless.
Wow.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you for expounding on that. Really appreciate it.
I'm just hearing all these. There's something going on with these teens. I guess we really got to get to our girls because I was 13 and he was 19.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. And he stole my virginity. And I felt dirty. I'm just writing down the key words that she was saying. I'm like, oh my God, I felt so dirty and ashamed. And of course, I never told anybody because I was forbidden from dating him because he was 19. Of course, I didn't listen to my mother. I dated him anyway. And it wasn't, and I'm listening to you guys talking about these feelings. What were you thinking? I just thought he was cute. He was just cute, And the kids I hung out with were like 2 to 3 years older than me, so that's why he was in that crowd. My aunt was 2 years older than me, so that was her friends, So I didn't know anything about love or sex or anything at that time, but he did. Oh my gosh, that's a whole nother story. You got to read my memoir to get all the details on that. Coming out next year. Okay.
I'm looking forward to it. Absolutely.
Okay, so let me go back to domestic violence for a minute. You had mentioned you was at a seminar and you talked about how it might take 7 times before a woman leaves a relationship. And I was just wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit and tell us why you think that might happen.
Sure. I mean, there's obviously a list of reasons why women return, right? When you're in a destructive relationship, it's not uncommon for our thoughts to be distorted. We will be told, you're wrong, you're making that up, all the gaslighting and the love bombing and all the things that go on. That distorts our perception of ourselves and our thinking. Maybe I am wrong. He's older, stronger, wiser, whatever our thoughts are. I should listen to him. I think another reason why people go back is it can be very, very difficult if we are young women with children, with no money. So many times we are controlled financially or unable to work at all, sabotaged financially. How can you leave? There's also the consideration for memories. If women didn't easily forget, how many children would we have, right? Because having a baby is a process, and sometimes it's painful, and then a newborn is a real challenge, right? But we do it over and over again because we love so much, and we forget about those negative things. We remember the good, always remember the good, and always see the best in people, and always hold out hope that the next time it'll be different. Children, we go back for children. It's better for them to be, or perhaps because if we don't go back, he's going to take the children from us. And we certainly don't want that. Sometimes we go back because we want to be the savior. And I did a lot of this. If I could fix him, then I could fix us. Mm-hmm. And I can do that, right? I can do that. Sometimes we do it because we really feel like we are wrong. And if we just change, everything will change. Sometimes we do it, I think we go back because there are family and religious expectations. You don't get divorced, or perhaps you watched your mother stay in an unhealthy relationship, or have a sister that stayed in an unhealthy relationship. Another really big one, I think, is the isolation. Oftentimes when we're in an unhealthy relationship, we have been separated from a support group. And that isolation in and of itself can breed a loneliness and a lack of a support network that we need when we want to break free. The other thing that I think keeps us going back is what I call a trauma bond. Think lightning bolts and fireworks. You meet someone and you've known him your whole life. He's your soulmate, and instantly you're bonded, and the bond that you make with this person is so strong. A trauma bond, in my opinion, can be almost like an addiction. And just like someone with an addiction cannot break free without help, I think it can be really difficult for us to break a trauma bond. When I say that, I mean, our histories draw us toward these unhealthy partners. And then when we're with those unhealthy partners, I think the bond that's created, not only emotionally, but chemically in our brains, is actually very strong and very difficult to break. So I think those are the reasons why women go back.
Let me, Rhonda, she mentioned the word addiction. Is there any research in your work? First, tell them your role. We didn't even tell them what your role is. She works in the domestic violence field. And then I'll ask you a question.
That's my role. I work in domestic violence. So I'm at the Women's Center of Greater Pittsburgh, my full-time employment. And I've been there for many years. And a lot of those years I've worked primarily in the prevention side of it, but very well of working with intervention as the case may be. So
and I was wondering, the question was, she mentioned the word addiction. And I had a young lady call me, reaching out, my program, reaching out for support. And she told me that she has a fear that she's going to go back to her perpetrator because she feels like she's addicted to him. Then I've heard three since that, and I had never heard that before. And I've heard two other women. I had a woman who was going to volunteer for me, but she's in that mode too. She's feeling like, oh, what happens if you want to go back to that person? I was like, wow, I don't know. I've never heard that before. So now that's a whole nother area that I think we need to address within our support group. We will have a group for those women who want to go back. They don't want to go back, but they want to go back. So is there any research around that area, that issue?
Yeah, I'm not real sure about research specific to the word addiction. I will say when Linda said that word, a little knot came in my stomach, like, ooh, would I think about it as an addiction? But I certainly do understand. And the first thing I'm going to say before I go any further is Linda's describing her story. So I never, ever take away somebody describing their own story and how they find it for themselves or define it for themselves. I will say that because when I think about the word trauma, I think of it as being more deep rooted into our spirit and our souls. Like that trauma is something that is just that trauma is something that lives inside of us. So when I think about it, something inside of us. I don't want to get into that because I don't know research on it. Maybe I'll start some research on it, but I will just say that I understand the connection that trauma, that bond, it makes me feel like I belong here. And that's why I go back here. Linda did talk about the intergenerational impact of domestic violence. And I think that is really critically important to recognize that I witnessed, I'm sorry, this is not my testimony here, but I say I witnessed, but someone who has witnessed intimate partner violence in their home, someone whose older siblings, or a favorite auntie that you had, and you recognize that was the relationship that you learned from at 12, 13, 15. Those are the relationships that you looked up to, right? So now when you find yourself in that kind of relationship, it takes a different role. Linda also talked about the chemical part in our brain. So it takes on a different role, different meaning to us of how we survive in that relationship, right? That it's not my role just up and leave. I'm going to survive because that's what my family does, so I don't, again, I can't say I know any specific research around the word addiction, understand the word and the question of addiction trauma and it being lifelong. So
Maybe
Roxanne.
I'm sorry. Maybe I should have asked. Have you ever heard other women say that? Did they feel like they're addicted to this person, or they want to leave? Have you encountered that? I know you're administration, so you might not hear that. I don't know, like through the counseling center or anything like that.
I'm direct service along with administration, but thanks. I tell you what I have heard a lot of women say. Yeah, you know what I've heard a lot of women and young ladies even say is, I don't understand why I feel so drawn to him or why I keep ending up in another relationship like this. I've heard that a lot of times.
Okay.
So,
yeah. Okay. Well, Rhonda, I think the next question is yours. I like it too. Or I like all your questions.
So Linda, if we could just go back for our listeners who've not read your book, I'm going to encourage them to please get a copy of Entrenched by Linda Blakemore. It's an excellent read. It's an easy read as well. But I think it's important that you at some point just get a chance to read that. I'm just going to promote that for Linda. But I also know in the book, Linda, you talk about different affairs that you had as a married woman. And that's what I was referring to when I say, as women, we don't put that in writing. If we put it in writing, we put it in the journal that you mentioned earlier, Linda. Then I write it in my journal, but then I hide that journal in a very secret place that I don't want anybody else to see. But you put it out there, you published it. So can you talk about, particularly, I am really concerned, not concerned, but really like, what grabbed you in that relationship with Richard? Can you tell the listening audience a little bit about Richard and what really got you connected from your side of it with Richard?
So Richard was about 14 years older than me. My friend and I had gone after work. I needed to unwind, and she had a sale falling apart that she needed to find a way to save. And so we wanted to be alone. We chose a table in the far corner of the room away from people. But he approached our table. He was charismatic and tall and not especially handsome, but there was really something about him that it just had a magnetism about him, and I was immediately drawn to him. I couldn't control how I felt. Right, so the things that about Richard, I guess I would say are, he was too good to be true. I felt like I had known him my whole life. I mean, when I talked earlier about lightning bolts and fireworks, I felt all of those things for no substantiated reason. I felt like we were soulmates who had finally found one another. Somehow, instantaneously, I felt like he was the one who could deliver everything I needed in my whole life. I didn't even know him. Of course, our relationship then moved at an accelerated pace, and the faster it went, the happier I was. I made sacrifices and changes quickly and without much consideration for the consequences. And one of the biggest things is I realized a fear of abandonment that I did not know I previously had.
Wow.
It was very strong and very, very difficult for me to resist. It was working on a different level. It wasn't a conscious level. It was really working on a different level for me.
That's so powerful. Wow. Thanks, Linda. It reminds me of a saying that actually I saw this, a therapist at our center has this in her office, and it says, the things we don't repair, we will repeat.
Yes.
Does that resonate with you at all, Linda?
It really does, over and over and over again. Yes. And, you talked about how as women we're private with our mistakes. And I started journaling as a way to really understand. And when you write something, it separates it from you. You put it on the page and it has a life of its own, and you can go back to it and you can refer to it as much as you want, but it's no longer inside you, keeping you sort of fixated and anxious. So writing always was important to me, but it became especially important to me in healing. And the more I wrote, the more I learned about myself, and the more I think I healed and I grew. There came a time when I said, this has served its purpose for me. I know why I made the choices and mistakes that I made, and I'm done with this. I really don't want to publish this. I don't want to put myself out there as such a damaged individual. I mean, my goodness, my family could read this. But I was asked to have lunch with a young lady. And, my first book was based on the premise that children are more likely to listen to and learn from other children than they ever do from adults, right? So I knew that I could tell her what to do and give her good advice, but I also knew she would probably more likely listen to and learn from my journey. So I took her to lunch and I told her my story. And she had been making a lot of bad decisions in her life and in her relationship choices. And after I finished speaking with her, she got up and she came around the table and she said, "Your story helped me understand things about myself that I had never been able to make sense of." I knew when I walked to my car that day that no matter how scary it was, I really needed to put my story out there, because maybe someone else could also learn from it as an intervention tool. In the best world, of course, maybe it could be a preventive tool. But I knew I had to do it. It didn't matter that I was really exposing all of my flaws and my sins, and so that's why I did it.
Wow. Yeah. You answered actually the next thought that I had. So thank you, because I was going to ask you what would be a beneficial lesson. And I hear your beneficial lesson was being able to open up and share that truth with somebody who was on a path also that could use your story. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I mean, there were a lot of lessons that I learned through this journey. Honestly, I came to learn truly that my unresolved trauma really was affecting the choices I was making. I came to learn and see in myself and see in others an amazing ability to survive, to be resourceful, to overcome, to grow, to forgive, and to love. I came to understand we are all put in just the way we are. None of us is perfect. We're all sort of broken in some way. I came to understand that being alone is better than being in an unhealthy or an unsafe situation. And I've come to learn that a healthy, centered, respectful, reciprocal love is possible.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I'm glad you said that, because Wanda knows we've had a workshop and we did a survey asking, is there such a thing as a healthy relationship? And some of the women have said no. And that's because they've never experienced it. They've never even seen it. With all the trauma I've been through, I've seen healthy relationships and I do know they exist. So that gives me hope. But, and I am so glad you mentioned therapy and journaling, because those are some of the things that I encourage the women to do as a part of their healing process. But I think we're almost about to wrap up. Do you have anything else, Wanda? I have one more thing.
I have one closing question. This will be my closing question. First, before I even do that, and this has been fantastic. I mean that from my heart. I have people who say, Rhonda, when you and Roxanne going to do another podcast? People really learn from our podcast. Excuse me, we haven't reached the numbers of hundreds of thousands yet. But if one person, and it's been more than one, has said, I learned from your podcast, when are you going to do it again? It's very meaningful. So thank you for helping us to bring out a meaningful lesson and story. And my last question in closing is, can you share an encouraging message to women who find themselves in similar situations right now?
Well, I would say if it feels too good to be true, it's not true. If you feel like you've known this person forever, that's probably because there's an unconscious reason you're being drawn to this person, the way maybe a daughter of an alcoholic is drawn to a drinker. If a relationship moves at an accelerated pace, please slow down. You have the right to do that. If you find yourself making huge life changes, be aware. If you find that this relationship comes at the cost of friendships with family and your friends, stop. If you believe this person is the only person on the planet who can fulfill your needs, be very careful. And if you find that you have developed a fear or realized that you have a fear of abandonment you did not know you had, please seek help. Those are all really subtle but very important warning signs. Relationships do not have to hurt. They take work, but reciprocal love is reciprocal, respectful love. You don't have to demand it, and no one should demand it from you. It should be equal and respectful, and you can have that. I say to all the women out there, you deserve it just the way you are. You're perfect just the way you are. And you deserve to be respected and loved. And you can have that.
Thank you, Linda. We preach this all the time. So here you guys hearing, you're hearing it from another source. It's real. He's not making this stuff up. And then finally, I just wanted to say that I recognize that you've done exactly what I've done. You've turned your lemons into lemonade, and I love it. And so because of that, I'd like you just to give us a little bit more about your advocacy work. We talked about Entrenched, so I was going to ask about the books. You talked a little bit about your first book, but whatever else you want to share, and let us know how listeners can get to you for listening engagements or speaking engagements. And I just wanted to let you know that we will be putting your video on our website and on our YouTube channel. So
that's awesome. Thank you so much.
People can watch it again.
Thank you. So in addition to the 2 books that I have written, there's certainly been some articles written by me and about me in some major magazines. But right now, mostly I'm doing videos, podcasts, radio, and a lot of in-person engagements. I'm also working with folks like you, domestic violence agencies, rape crisis centers, and global agencies like Dress for Success, Voices of Women Worldwide, to advocate for and educate women, especially those who struggle to confront their past or break from unhealthy relationships. I've recently started teaching a class. It's called From Survivor to Author /Advocate. It is designed to help survivors organize their trauma, promote their healing, and share through the art of writing and storytelling, whether they want to be a speaker or just want to do it for themselves. On October 13th, I will be participating in the Dress for Success All for Her event at the Tanger Outlets. On Tuesday evening, October 18th, at the Shaler Library, as part of the Meet the Author series, I will share my personal journey moving from survivor to author. And I have a website, lindaleeblakemore.com. People can certainly reach me there if they have questions, if they want to reach out about a speaking engagement. All of my speaking engagements I do for free. So wow. I'm just really interested in spreading the word and empowering women.
That is absolutely wonderful. So are these events on your website? The October 13th, all of that's on the website. Very, very good. Oh my gosh. And I will be reaching out to you because I see you being a part of our support group somehow.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, I see you talking to the ladies. So with that, I'm going to say thank you for your transparency. This was so powerful. I agree with Rhonda. She said from the heart, from my heart too. I'm so glad we met you. Hey, y'all, LinkedIn is the stuff. That's how she found me on LinkedIn, and she reached out. So I really, really appreciate it. And I just want to share with the audience that if you would like to watch a replay of this or any of our past episodes, you can go to our website at warheals.org. That's warheals.org. Or you can, and when you get there, click on the programs tab. And you can either listen to the audio, listen to the podcast, or watch them. So that's all I wanted to say. You have anything else, Wanda, before I say goodbye?
No, I was really glad. I'm sorry if I had a little distraction at a conference and out of town. And there was no one outside when I came outside, and about 50 more people came out at different times. So we couldn't distracting.
Yeah, we couldn't hear them. But I need to apologize to Rhonda too, because I didn't even let her say when we introduced, when we first started, she always says her little part. I just act like she wasn't even a part of the team.
That's okay.
Sorry, I love you.
Yeah, I love you too. We were both excited to get started with Linda. I'm good.
Okay, so we'll see y'all next time. Thank you, guys. Okay.
Thank you.
Once again, we want to thank you for joining us today. We hope that you heard something which will stick on your mind this week. And even more, we hope that you will find someone to share the message with. We have one request. Please engage with us. Follow us and like and subscribe to all of our social media platforms. We're at warheals_ on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Spelled out, that is WAARHEALS_. And on Facebook, you'll find us at War Heals. Please plan to join us next time. And in the meantime, you can find all of our episodes archived wherever you listen to podcasts. See you next time on Healing Space Live and Online. Chats with Roxanne and Rhonda.